The episode picks up right where the previous one left off, right after the switch was flipped, turning the innies back into outies. Helly's father, clearly displeased, stormed into the room, called her a fetid moped, a creative insult that might stick with some viewers, and then abruptly left. Helly, understanding the gravity of the situation, realized she needed to do damage control immediately. Her first priority was to figure out where the other innies were and who they might have spoken to. Knowing the story could spiral out of control, she also recorded a public message. In the recording, she claimed she had a bit too much to drink at the party and made a joke that some people took too seriously. She insisted it was just a misunderstanding and tried to downplay the incident. Helly delegated tasks to Milchick, instructing him to find out exactly who Mark and Irving spoke to and to decide whether they should keep their jobs. Despite the tense situation, Helly took a moment to acknowledge Miss Cobell's loyalty, even though Cobell had been treated poorly in the past. Helly, speaking on behalf of herself, her father, and the board, apologized to Cobell and expressed gratitude for her commitment. Cobell, assuming this gesture meant she'd be reinstated, began strategizing ways to fix the chaos. She suggested conducting interviews to gather information, but Helly interrupted her with a different proposal. Helly offered Cobell a promotion to lead a new initiative called the Severance Advisory Council. However, Cobell wasn't interested in this role. She wanted her previous position running the severed floor. Helly then clarified that Milchick was now in charge of the severed floor and the advisory council was the only offer on the table. Frustrated, Cobell said she would think about it, but her discontent was clear. As Cobell left the meeting, escorted by a security figure named Mr. Drummond, her disappointment was palpable. Elsewhere, Milchick visited Irving at his home. Irving was cooperative, stating nothing unusual had occurred. However, Milchick didn't fully explain the reason for his visit. Instead, he told Irving that his innie had been involved in a physical altercation at Lumen and as a result, he was being let go. The same fate awaited Dylan, who was also fired based on fabricated allegations about his innie. Interestingly, while Irving and Dylan were terminated, Mark wasn't. Meanwhile, Mark was at home with Devin and Rickon, trying to make sense of his innie's cryptic message. "She's alive." Rickon speculated it referred to the baby, but Devin wasn't convinced. She couldn't ignore the strange details, like Mark clutching a photo of his wife and his odd behavior throughout the evening. They also puzzled over the mysterious involvement of Miss Cobell, who had used a fake name and left their baby behind after briefly taking her. When Milchick arrived to speak with Mark, he was surprisingly open. He explained the overtime contingency, a protocol used to activate innies outside of work hours. Mark questioned why he hadn't known about this, to which Milchick responded that it was detailed in the forms Mark had signed when he joined Lumen. While Mark seemed indifferent, Devin was visibly upset. She confronted Milchick about Cobell's actions, labeling them as untrustworthy and unethical. Milchick brushed off her concerns, describing Cobell as severely unwell and assuring them that she would never be allowed back on the severed floor. Before leaving, Milchick made a point to encourage Mark to return to work, saying, "I hope to see you on Monday." However, Mark remained uncertain. Later that evening, Mark visited Cobell's home, but she wasn't there. The next morning, Devon texted Mark, suggesting they meet at a diner to discuss the events of the previous night. At the diner, Devon floated the idea of legally petitioning to contact his innie to get answers, but Mark dismissed it, stating he planned to quit his job. This sparked an argument between the siblings, with Devon insisting they needed clarity, while Mark seemed resigned to letting it go. As for the rest of the team, Dylan began attending job interviews but with little success. Irving, on the other hand, was more secretive. He used a payphone to leave a cryptic message saying, "My innie got the message. but the recipient didn't answer. Unbeknownst to Irving, Audibert was nearby, watching him. Later that night, Milchik visited Mark again, this time with a fruit basket and a more persuasive offer. He promised Mark a pay raise, incentives, and reminded him of the reason he chose to be severed in the first place: the unbearable pain of losing his wife, Gemma. This emotional appeal worked, and Mark reluctantly agreed to return to work. Helly, observing Mark from a boardroom via surveillance, watched him walk into Lumen. She had reviewed footage showing her Innie's relationship with Mark, adding another layer of complexity to the situation. In the room with her were Milchik, Drummond, and a woman named Natalie. They discussed the replacement team for Mark's group, though concerns were raised about how quickly it was assembled. Helly emphasized that team chemistry didn't matter. The priority was for Mark to complete a mysterious project called Cold Harbor. Eventually, the original team was reinstated, albeit with some hesitation. Innie Mark was thrilled to have his team back, while Audi Mark remained oblivious to the ongoing schemes. One night, after work, Mark saw Coble packing up her belongings and preparing to leave town. He confronted her, asking what was going on, but she refused to answer. As they blocked her car, he asked a pointed question: "Do you know something about Gemma?" Coble's reaction, a mixture of shock and hesitation, suggested she did. Without responding, she honked her horn, drove around him, and left.